Welcome to Mose Cybersecurity Institute. My name is Colin Marr and I'm the Global Account Director responsible for security solutions within the organisation. Today we continue our video series on compliance and talking about another newly enacted piece of legislation, the GDPR. The GDPR is a really interesting piece of legislation because, let me start from the beginning. Firstly, let me look at what it excludes. It looks at excluding personal transactions. That is, if you're communicating with another individual and transacting electronically, then the legislation has been specifically set up to exclude those transactions from its scope and reach. However, organisations are not so fortunate in that all organisations that either operate within the borders of the EU or deal with any EU-based organisation, or more importantly, if you have clients that are based in the EU, you need to comply with the obligations that are contained within the GDPR, which is effectively, it's a piece of legislation that sought to harmonise privacy obligations that have been obviously imposed upon regulated entities within that particular jurisdiction. But it also looks to dovetail into domestic legislation, which in some cases either complies with, provides additional obligations, or to some extent can be contrary to obligations contained within the GDPR. Obviously it seeks to work in unison with the other legislative frameworks, and so it is ineffective to the extent that other legislative frameworks are in place and protect information. And I think it's been designed in such a way to promote what we might term global compliance. It's to set standards that ensure that all organisations that are dealing with personal information do so in a sound and responsible manner. Because if I look at the legislation, it deems a breach in many ways, not just by, as we traditionally think, someone has compromised your organisation or inadvertently disclosed personal information about your clients in the public domain, but it also looks at if you've inadvertently deleted customer information and you don't have a backup of that information, if you have inadvertently sent information out to clients that has information about other clients, providing there is sufficient information for that individual to be identified, then that could be deemed a breach. And any breach has serious financial consequences, not just in terms of penalties, but reputational damage. And sometimes it's hard to put a price on the damage that that can do to an organisation, not just now, but in the future. If we look at incidents that occur even within the Australian jurisdiction, often breaches can cost companies in excess of $2 million to remediate. And quite often, organisations that have been affected by a breach may not operate or may no longer be operating within 12 months of that breach occurring. So it has serious implications for business. And I think we always need to be mindful of that when we're looking at these regulatory frameworks. But I think it does a lot of really good things in terms of asking us why we're actually capturing customer information. Is that information relevant to the objectives of our organisation? Furthermore, if you have to disclose that information to a third party, then it also imposes those same obligations on the third party to manage that information, and also on you to ensure that that organisation is being compliant. It also looks at not just privacy in the traditional sense, but what they term as privacy by design. So actually designing a framework or an architecture with privacy in mind so that every action you undertake is one that is both responsible in terms of what information you're capturing, but how are you disclosing it? Ensuring that you have appropriately skilled stakeholders within your organisation who are tasked to administer the obligations contained within this legislation, so that you have working with your internal privacy officers, you have a data protection officer, and you work collaboratively with the executive teams to ensure that the organisation is not only being compliant, but is undertaking safe and appropriate work practices. Anyway, I thank you so much for your time and attention today, and I really hope you enjoyed some of the things covered in the series, and we look forward to our next instalment. Thank you again.